Hey guys, it's Dash Zach back with another review, this time with the Logitech G703, this time with the Pulsar X3, this time with the Teevolution Terra. Turns out the third time's the charm, and it's not just with this intro. We had the old school legend of the G703, the failed reboot attempt in my opinion of the Pulsar X3, and now the one we've all been waiting for, the Teevolution Terra. Let's get right into it. So here we have it, the Teevolution Terra, the superior successor to the Logitech G703, a mouse that many people, myself included, have been waiting a long time for. Teevolution was formerly a sub-brand of Fantech, and now they stand alone as their own company, still under the Fantech family. Spec-wise, the Terra comes in under 50 grams to $39.50, up to 8K polling. That dongle is optional. You can go to Indiegogo to pick this up right now. That was actually a lie. This mouse is sold out right now on Indiegogo, but the retail price is going to be $106 with the 8K dongle included, or $80, but it's been going for $80 and $60 respectively without the 8K dongle on Indiegogo. This was sent out to me for review by Teevolution. Many thanks. Something I don't usually talk about too much with mice, but I have to with this mouse, is the SICK dongle. It has a display for all of the stats of your mouse, battery life, polling rate, DPI, and whether you have motion sync on. Also, if you double tap the side button here, it turns into a clock with the date. I've been using this a ton just to be like a little clock by my desk, and I absolutely love that feature. Getting into the implementation of the mouse, this has the FE opticals. They're not Omrons, but they do have a 100 million lifespan, and they're very similar. They're very light, very spammable. Pre-travel is nice. There's maybe a little bit more post-travel than you'd like, but it doesn't really affect anything as far as clicking the mouse. I never noticed it when I was actually using it. There's very tight tolerances here. There's not a lot of wobble side to side, and there's not a lot of wobble if you press anywhere on the M1 or M2. Very, very well implemented. Love that from Teevolution. Always like when a mouse company puts this here in the middle here to show DPI. Don't really care about the DPI feature, but it usually prevents extra wobble. Seems like a little hack that more companies could be using on all their mice. Maybe they think it's ugly. I'm not sure. The other thing that impressed me about these clicks is they're still very light and very spammable towards the top. They're a little bit heavier, but they're still pretty spammable, and that's something that you don't always see on a mouse if you have a very aggressive claw grip. The scroll wheel has defined steps, but they're very light. The click is a medium actuation, but it's extremely spammable. No issues there. Not low quality at all. I enjoy that. This is one of the best features of this mouse. These side buttons are freaking massive, and I love it. They're super accessible no matter where you're holding the mouse. They're very light. They're very tactile, and they bounce back very quickly. There's not a lot of pre-travel, and they do not sink into the shell at all. These may be the perfect side buttons with how large they are, how accessible they are, and just how responsive they feel in-game. I guess if you have Sasquatch hands, you might bump these, but honestly, with how high they are up, because it's an Ergo, and they make up for that with the size, and I think they're just perfect. On top of being very large, they also protrude nicely from the shell. Really just no complaints here. Coming to the bottom of the mouse, it's not boring. There's actually something to talk about here. The sensor is a little further forward than center on the mouse, but the real news here is by default, they give you these Honeycomb skates, which I wasn't sure how I would feel about these, but I figured what the heck. And as you can see, I've not removed them from the mouse. At first, I didn't think that I liked them, but what it actually ends up feeling like is a bunch of little dots on your mouse as opposed to the one pad skate or a few other dots. This kind of causes you to pick up, I would say, more texture on any pad that is very textured. And to me, it didn't really slow down my mouse at all. It gave me a very nice glide. They weren't slow, but what it did do is give me more of a sense of control again without slowing me down. It's a property I would attribute to the Artisan Heian actually. Its rough texture gives me more of a controlled feeling, even though the pad's very quick, and this is the same effect I have from these skates. They're pretty high quality. They're not thin by any means, and after using them for a bit, I had no complaints. They do provide a pair of smooth normal PTFE skates with the mouse as well, or I'm sure you could throw some aftermarket dots on here if you did desire. Teevolution is on top of it, so these dots will fit inside of this skate design. I'm also going to just show you this now. The skate design of this is the exact match to the Logitech G703. Another nod to Teevolution for pulling an anti-Logitech and not changing the skate design from a mouse they're sort of honoring, as opposed to Logitech, who changed up the skate design on their own mice iterations, like the Logitech GPX to GPX2. In the QC front, we have build integrity. There's a very slight bit if you push really hard here, but no flex you would get in-game. No give on the top. Again, a very small amount on the bottom, but nothing that's going to affect you negatively. The build quality on this is rock solid. There's no caving in on the front or the back or anywhere that's concerning. A very solid job for Teevolution to get a mouse this large, under 50 grams, with that solid build integrity. The coating on this mouse is quite good, and it's the same between the black and the white as well, as I checked with Teevolution. It's rubberized, it's very grippy. It's not over the top insanely grippy, but it's also not slippery at all. It's exactly what I'm looking for in a coating, so I have no complaints. It will pick up some fingerprints, as you can see here, at least on the black. Nothing crazy. Like a first batch Pulsar X2 Mini, I had some real problems with that, so this coating gets a pass for me, probably about an 8.5 or 9 out of 10. So here we have the shape comparison we've all been waiting for, the G703 versus the Terra. Also, shout out to my Mousecast co-host Phalanges for letting me borrow this refurb unit from him. Also, its original owner, who has some love going on here, wearing off the rubber coating. They must have been fingertipping the G703, it looks like, from where my pinky lands right here. I'm just going to say it off the bat, there aren't many differences here, but one of them is the click height. Oddly enough, the click height on the G703 was taller than that of the X3. The Terra is a little bit taller than that, but it's not really noticeable in hand as far as I can tell, and the rest of the shape is pretty similar, and I'll just continue to give you an idea of that as we roll around. I absolutely love, as we mentioned before, that we have the giant side buttons on the Terra. Shockingly, the G703s were actually a little bit larger, but but we haven't seen much like that anywhere else. Even from the back here, we can see the profiles essentially match up. I just really did not detect any difference with the shapes of these mice. Any difference you see here is slight camera angle. Even the sensor is pretty much in line with that of the G703, and as I mentioned before, the skate design is the same as well. We have the nice modern mouse feature of the rounded clicks here on the Terra that make it much less abrasive, and the sharp edges here that we found on the G703. And the comfort grooves that we have here on the Terra more or less line up with what we had on the G703, which is also a huge plus and keeps it extremely comfortable in hand. It's possible you also came here for the comparison with a more modern mouse. This is the Pulsar X3, so here it is. The side buttons and the X3 were actually pretty well implemented. They were very spammable and very tactile. On 2 of the 3 units that I had, there was one where they were mushy. I'm going to give the edge here though to the Terra just because they're equally spammable and tactile, and as you saw before, they're just absolutely massive. While we have the side profile, you can see one of the shape differences here. We're much taller throughout the entire left side of the mouse here on the Terra, and the X3 tapers off more so, which does contribute here to the much lower click height of the X3. You can also see here comfort grooves much more well defined on the Terra, almost non-existent here on the X3. Another thing that Pulsar changed up is you can see this is almost symmetrical here on the clicks, which is not what the original G703 and the Terra did. It was a little bit more asymmetrical here. Specifically on the left side, it did not match up to the right side, how Pulsar made it look on the X3. Coming to the other side, you're also going to see we're taller here on the right to give more support to the right side of your hand. I will say in hand, something that the lower click height on the X3 does is it makes you feel more locked in, like you want to palm it more because you're more supported, because your hand kind of slopes down on the front and it really fills you up, whereas I get an easier time within a relaxed claw here on the Terra because it stays taller in the front and doesn't force me to loop down over here on the front. As far as coatings go, the X3 actually does have a pretty decent coating. I may have been too harsh on it in my initial review. They're pretty even here between the Terra and the X3. The main difference here in my opinion is the absolute ding-dong decision of Pulsar to put Ergo opticals in the main clicks here on the Pulsar X3. They're not very spammable at all, which is a huge detractor for me. They're not really tactile. They just kind of mushy and terrible, and I really don't know why they didn't just wait and put their opticals in there. It would have been a way better decision. It was my least favorite part of this mouse. And again, we've talked about how spammable and tactile the clicks and the FE opticals are here in the Terra. A great decision by them and a clear winner for me. My 2 top things on a mouse are coating and clicks, and this wins on clicks and a whole bunch of other things. And if you're going to go head to head with the X3, with the Terra, and with the G703, obviously this thing's kind of an old brick and I would never recommend it to anybody these days. When it comes down to the X3 and the Terra, this was not my favorite mouse. In fact, I was pretty negative on it, possibly one of the most negative reviews out there. I've come around on it a little bit. It's a fine successor before the Terra comes out, but if you want a true G703 successor, this here is the answer. This is not Star Wars. This is the mouse you're looking for. A few shape comparisons with some top of the market mice. Here we have the Deathadder V3, one of the top Ergos still in my opinion. We're all the same size and length. This may fill your hand a bit more because it's a little bit taller in the front of the mouse, but a pretty similar experience as far as the size of the mouse goes. We're medium to large here. You'll find the Viper V3 Pro to be about the same length, but the Terra is going to come in a lot taller, and again, it's going to fill your hand a lot more. The V3 Pro is actually surprisingly narrow here at the middle, which is a feature that I do like sometimes depending on what I'm playing. You can see the height difference both in the overall height of the mouse and the click height. And then taking a look at the GPX, again, much narrower of a mouse, about the same length, not quite as tall, not going to fill your hand quite as much. The Terra does force a bit of a grip, just being an Ergo, whereas we have the generic potato that is the GPX. Terra has both a desktop driver and a web driver. The reason I'm showing you the desktop driver is the initial pairing process, which gets you to the 1K dongle and then the 8K dongle, requires the desktop driver right now to work. Teevolution is aware of this and they're working on it, but just a PSA, start with the desktop driver for now to get paired to the 8K dongle, and then let's be honest, this does everything you want it to do, but there's a web driver, so we're going to close this crap and go over there. The web driver is virtually a mirror of the desktop driver, which is great. You can set your DPI, pulling right up to 8K hertz with the dongle I have. I always had high performance mode on, set your LOD and all these other settings here that we always have. I always love having a web driver, and honestly today it's pretty much a disappointment if you don't have it, so companies who don't, step it up. Thank you Teevolution for not being one of those companies. Overall, my experience with this mouse has been nothing short of freaking fantastic. I've had a great time with it. The shape is super comfortable. First serious mouse that I mained, I would say, would be a Logitech G403 back in 2016 when I was playing Overwatch, and this obviously fits that shape. It's super comfortable in everyday use. It's crazy comfortable in game. It gives a lot of stability while still having a little bit of maneuverability in hand. Given the way the shape is, it's very unique for an Ergo. This thing shines, absolutely shines in tracking scenarios for me. I throw this on and I instantly get close to my all-time high in stuff like smooth bot and slow tracking and reactive tracking scenarios. It's actually uncanny, and I also perform pretty well with it in clicking scenarios. You do sacrifice a little bit of maneuverability, in my opinion, with any Ergo, and especially with one that's this large as the Terra is, but that really wasn't an issue for me at all. The mouse is really well implemented. The QC is great all around, as I showed before, with the massive side buttons, these super satisfying clicks, which was the part of the X3 that really let me down, as I mentioned before. The mouse honestly feels light as a feather, being this large and this light, but it doesn't feel like it's hollow with a bad lightness. It's almost perfectly balanced. The weight balancing as well, as I speak of that. Dead center, no issues with that. We're not tilting either way. And honestly, I don't really think I've complained about this mouse, and I just find myself going back to it no matter what I'm testing, no matter what I'm getting ready to review. The Terra's been on my desk since I got it, and I honestly don't see it leaving, which is not something I can say for many mice that I review these days. It's kind of a gauntlet, and I always switch between all these mice, but this thing will not be going anywhere. I'll be recommending it to anybody who loved the G703, anybody who thought they loved the X3, and anybody who just wants a nice nice, comfortable Ergo mouse to get back into gaming or to take their game to the next level. The actual performance of this mouse was also exceptional. The dongle with 3 or 4 other 4 and 8K dongles plugged in on those high polling rates didn't show any interference in my game. Codecs was not stuttering, the sensor wasn't stuttering at all, something that I did notice sometimes on like the IPI float, for example. This did not experience that problem at all. It's a premium sensor experience like that you would find on something like the V3 Pro from Razer, as far as I can tell. Typically, if you have a cheaper, smaller dongle, you're going to get interference. Not the case here. This thing tracked smooth as butter with their 3950 implementation. And again, I thought these Honeycomb skates offered a unique experience that you can either buy into or quickly pivot from should you find the experience not satisfactory. Checking some weights, we have the Terra actually coming in completely stock at 51.2 grams, a little bit over the advertised 49 gram weight. And then we have the Pulsar X3 coming in completely stock at 54.1 grams, about a 2.5 gram difference. Not a really big deal. I wouldn't consider this if you're comparing the mice. It doesn't really make a difference. Taking some measurements because that's what I like to do. Your narrow wrist grip width is going to come in at a whopping 62.4 millimeters. The back player actually not that crazy at 65.4 millimeters. If you're gripping much further up on the mouse, it's pretty consistent in width. We're sticking to 62.9 millimeters here up at the front, and we're achieving a max hump height of roughly 42.9 millimeters. So that about sums up for my thoughts on the Teevolution Terra. This is indeed the mouse you've been looking for. It was a joy to use through and through, from the performance to the feel in hand to the high quality implementation of the mouse. I really had no complaints about this mouse. If you're looking for a new age G703, better Pulsar X3, go out and pick this thing up. You will not be disappointed in any way. I can fully recommend this. If I had a seal of approval, I'd give it to this, but I'll stick to just giving it a very, very strong recommendation. And honestly, looking forward to whatever Teevolution has to come next. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe and leave a like. I got some upcoming reviews of the low-free high-pace bike helmet looking mouse, and then probably some sort of roundup that'll include the Felina S480, the Deluxe M900 Mini, as well as the Atco Pulsar 1, and perhaps a few other mice. Please follow me on Twitter at Dastrazak for tweets about mice and other updates. Check out the Mousecast podcast, join the Discord, and with that, we'll see ya.